All right, today I was reffing under 15 boys soccer game, and I was watching this one player, and he was, really dominant player, all over the field, and just beasting. And I was like, man, this guy's got to be, a college player. And then the more I watched it, I realized if you looked at him, he looked like somebody who has already well into puberty, if not all the way through puberty. I mean, he's walking around, he's got actual muscles, and he probably shaves and everything. And then you look at some of his teammates, and even though he wasn't the tallest player on his team, there were a couple of tall players, but the taller players were skinny. And not coordinated. They were they'd obviously gone through a growth spurt, but they hadn't really reestablish their full coordination after going through, a normal growth spurt at that age. And then you had also the younger looking players who were shorter, and just younger looking in the face and so forth, that were probably not even into puberty or barely even starting puberty. And so it causes a real problem when you're trying to evaluate talent, when you're seeing these players in age groups, because while their chronological age may be the same, they're all under 15 players, so they're all probably 14 years old, turning 15 sometime within the year. Their biological ages are so different, and so even if all of the players have a relatively close birth date, that doesn't mean they're all going to develop at the same time. They're not all going to hit puberty at the same time. They're not all going to hit their growth spurts at the same time. There's great individual variation amongst the players on a team or in a league setting, and those variations will, in some respect, determine who are the good players at a certain age. And right around that 12, 13, 14, 15 age, when players really start to grow and develop and mature, it becomes problematic because of how people relate to the players. So you take a player like this, he never leaves the field. He's put into the important positions in the center of midfield. He gets more touches on the ball. He probably maybe gets better coaching or more feedback from a coach because of the importance of his role on the team. And these then can create somewhat of a self-fulfilling prophecy where he looks like he's the best player, and it's primarily potentially due to being an early mature, but then he gets all these things because he's excelling at this age, which then contributes to him becoming a better player, down the road. Whereas a player, may have just as much or more potential, but be a late mature, and so maybe he's sitting on the bench. Maybe he doesn't get as many touches because of it. When he does play, maybe he plays, a less important position. Maybe the coach gives him less feedback because, he doesn't play as much. And maybe that player doesn't develop fully because he doesn't get these same opportunities, or maybe he ends up quitting because he doesn't like, being the 14th or 15th player on the team and only playing, a quarter to a half of a game, or something like that. And so even though he has just as much potential and potentially could be a great player down the road, because he's a late mature, he doesn't get that opportunity. And so it's very tricky kind of dynamic that coaches have to understand and assess and come up with solutions, because you have players who mature early and they're good, and it's good for the competitiveness of the team, and you also don't want to handicap somebody who's an early mature just because they mature early and say, well, yeah, you matured early, so you're probably not going to end up the best player 4 years from now, so I'm going to intentionally move you to the side, kind of thing. But in situations like this, which happens on virtually every team, every league, etc., we really want to be cognizant of, what we're looking at. Is he really a great soccer player, or is he simply a better athlete at this age because of his early maturing? So he's a little bit more coordinated, has a little bit better control, and that makes him a little bit more skilled and a little bit more athletic at this age. But once everybody kind of grows and matures and everybody kind of reaches the same biological age around 18, 19, 20 years old, he won't stand out, or maybe he will. Maybe he really is a great soccer player, and what I was seeing was because he was really good at soccer, and it made him look a little bit more coordinated and a little bit older because of his understanding of the game, reading of the game, intelligence, and some of these things. So as we're evaluating players, as we're determining playing time, as we're giving feedback to players, really need to be cognizant of the early matures, the late matures, and what we can do as coaches to try to offset some of the impact of being either an early mature or late mature, to make sure that the early mature aren't just relying on athleticism and strength to overpower the late matures, and to make sure that the late matures aren't being left behind simply because they haven't reached puberty yet. And this to me is one of the reasons why I think coaching younger children is far more complex and dynamic than coaching older ages. I think coaching older ages, you have a lot of different things that go into coaching at a varsity, college, professional level, to make it difficult. But the complexity of trying to address the needs of the huge individual variation between players, right around that 12, 13, 14, 15 year age groups, where there's some are starting puberty, some are almost through with puberty, and there's just great variation in players. Really makes it a complex job for coaches, and really needs to be something that is understood by coaches to help create a better environment for all players, both the early and the late maturers.